the more and more you are around polite, kind, chivalrous men, you have to allow them to be that. Like, it can be very easy for me to rush to the car before Tim and me open the door. You know, like, I have to let him kind of get there and open the door.
What's up, fam? Welcome back to our channel. My name is Tim. This is my beautiful wife, Pauline, and you're tuning in to another episode of the W Podcast, where you get wisdom in the word with the
Wheeler.
Hey, so we are so excited. We are doing question of the day, where we answer your anonymous questions. You can ask us a question, whether it's about dating, love, sex, whatever you have a question about when it comes to your love life, you can ask us and we will do our best to answer it. So any of our about pages or link in bio pages, whatever, any of our social media pages, you can ask us a question in the link there. So what's the question today?
Today's question is, how do you deal with a man that never had a father figure in his life and doesn't know completely how to love, but is a Christian, God-fearing man, but lacks the male chivalry?
How to love.
Oh, Lord.
You
You can tell who Tim's favorite rapper was before he got
back in the day, BC, praise God. All right, on a serious note, I will say...
Who's your favorite rapper now?
Shout out to Craig.
Very popular opinion.
It's the truth. Anyway.
Throwing out your game a little bit.
Yeah.
You gotta mix it up.
Whoa. All right, so to get back to the question, my man is a God-fearing man, but he lacks chivalry. So I don't know if this means he don't got no game. I don't know if this means he's not romantic. I don't know if this means he don't open the door for you. Like, what exactly does chivalry for you mean? Like, obviously we know what chivalry means, but what exactly do you mean here?
Should we do the definition? Look at the definition for everybody.
Sure, yeah, absolutely, because that's not necessarily a word that everybody uses nowadays.
Right.
Go ahead.
But I think it's something that I guess can be like culturally, it can change depending on where you are. So, I mean, the dictionary definition of it is the medieval knightly system with its religious, moral, and social code. Or maybe more familiarly, more commonly known as the combination of qualities expected of an ideal knight, especially courage, honor, courtesy, justice, and readily to help the weak. So, I mean, these are like not...
Yeah, can we get an urban dictionary? Goodness gracious.
Okay, so this one says other forms of chivalry. What is chivalry towards a woman? Men behaving courteously toward women, holding the door for them, offering them their jackets when it's cold, is called chivalry. Many women consider chivalry a lost art.
And Urban Dictionary says, because that may help some of y'all, it says chivalry is when a guy does something nice for a woman that is not usually expected in modern times. That's like a very low standard, but
right, because even that definition is not very.
This consists of a guy doing the gentlemanly thing. So.
Right, but what is that? That
open doors.
Well, I think those are examples of things, but some women don't like them. I don't do it for myself.
All right, let's get to the answer. So, a few things I got to say about this. The first thing I'll say is pray for him. You know, we've said this in other podcasts, but prayer is very important in any area of our life. But in relationships, we really do need prayer. And I think praying for him is very important, especially because you said that this is a really good man. Like you said, he's a Christian, he's God-fearing. Seems like everything else except this one area, not to minimize the one area, but it seems like everything else is kind of in a good place. So if that's the case, really praying for him and asking God to give him wisdom on how to love you better. And this is something that, and you're not married, so don't take this out of context, but this is something that when you get married and you start maturing in your marriage, that I feel like a lot of wives start learning is that let me do less nagging and more praying, because God can reach my man in ways that I can't.
Yeah.
So again, we're clearly not married, but the principle of let me pray and ask God to help him, because clearly what I've been trying to say is not connecting with him in a way that it needs to.
Yeah, that's so good.
Second thing I'll say is be patient. So if you have communicated with him, hey, I wish you did a little more, and you need to be specific because he may not know what you mean by chivalry, because we don't know what you mean by it. So once you clearly communicate with him, hey, whether it is opening the door, whether it is letting you order first off the menu, whatever, I don't know what you mean, walking on the left side of the sidewalk, whatever it is, like make sure that you're clear in what you're looking for, and then being patient, allowing him to grow. Because if you feel like God wants you to be in this relationship, growth is not going to happen overnight. Like it may take a few times before he remembers, like, oh, here's what you really want to see. Because he may forget to open, say it really is something as simple as opening the door. He may forget to do it, but what you want to see is he forget, and then he's like, oh snap, and then he runs back around and tries to get the door for you. Like that's growth. That's realistic. It's not going to be first thing he's going to do is start opening the door.
Transform.
Yeah, it don't work like that. A lot of times, God can use relationships to help sanctify us and help us become more like him. And I'm talking about you when I say this. I'm not even talking about him. Like, yes, that will happen for him. But for you, maybe patience is something that God is going to work out in you through this. As your man is continuing to grow and develop into all that God has for him, maybe God is going to require you to be more patient. Or maybe he is going to require you to be more clear in how you communicate with this person so that they can become better. And that's something that you want to be on the lookout for as well. And then I also would say being willing to teach him how to love you. We've talked about this before, but please do not expect somebody to know how to love you. Because honestly, I don't know how old y'all are, but the older you get, the more life experience you have. And he could have dated so many other women and no one has ever expected that of him. And I don't know if you said this, but yeah, you said he's never had a father figure. So he literally may not have had somebody to teach him how to do these things.
Right.
And it's not because he doesn't want to do them, it's because he doesn't even think about it. So that's something that you may have to be willing to communicate to him.
Yeah.
And not being frustrated that you have to do that.
Right.
Now, if you are frustrated that you have to do that, let's be clear. In dating, it's your right to leave. You do not have to stay with anybody.
But also know the next relationship, you're going to teach them too.
You're going to teach them something, and at the same time, you could be running into the same problem.
Yeah, exactly.
So you don't necessarily just want to run just because, especially if it's something that may be more chill like that. Obviously, if it was an integrity issue or he didn't really love Jesus or whatever it is, like just dip.
Yeah.
But if it's something simple that can be worked through, and he's a good man in every other way, definitely give him time. Because honestly, God doesn't do that to us. Like, God told us how to love him. He left his word for us to read so that we can love him well. So don't do that to somebody where you don't tell them how to love you and you expect them to do it.
Right. Nobody's a mind reader, at all. You can't expect something that you haven't communicated. That's a golden rule in every relationship. Your job can't fire you for showing up at 8:30 if they never told you that they wanted you there at 8. If you were like, oh well, I thought 8:30 was cool, and then that's not, that has to be communicated. So the same thing happens if you want him to open the door for you, if you want all these things. And I know again, we've heard some women feel like, oh, I shouldn't have to tell a man that these things are just standard cultural things, but guess what? They're not. And that's why people say things like chivalry is dead. And there are a lot of men who do grow up without fathers or without father figures. So who's supposed to teach them these things? Who's supposed to set these expectations for them? That was just, it's a complete eye-opener, especially culturally. In the Black culture, a lot of men don't grow up with their fathers in the house, and even if they do, a lot of times they're not healthy examples. So we do have to be gracious in that way. Someone had to teach you how to be a woman, and whether you realize it or not. And it's a lot easier culturally for women to learn to be nurturing and motherly than it is to learn for men to be leaders and to be protectors. So we do need to be gracious. I completely agree.
Yeah. What else?
Yeah, so this question is so interesting. I definitely wasn't expecting the connection between father figure and chivalry. I'm curious. It's are y'all dating? Is this somebody you're hoping to date, or you just started dating? Like, what's kind of...
Yeah, that's a good point, because
context.
I really was just assuming they were already in a relationship. Because
Yeah.
I feel like it may be different if it's like the first or second date. I don't know. That's just something.
Yeah, I mean, I won't assume that's what it is, because, like, or if it's somebody you hang around and, like, you're trying to scope him out, and then you notice, like, oh, well, when we're all out bowling together, he doesn't hold the door for me or anyone. You know, like, that's kind of rude. Because I can't think that you would be in a relationship with somebody and the problem is chivalry, because the chivalry is like a politeness thing, and it is important. And I pray, you know, Tim is very chivalrous, and I believe that all of the sons that we have, how many kids we have, I don't know, but we have one son right now, but like he'll be chivalrous and respectful and polite to women because of the example he sees in his dad. But I guess I have a hard time believing like everything. It's just kind of, I don't want to say it's like, I feel like there's more. There's got to be more issues. If you guys are in a real relationship, like a exclusive dating relationship, then it's more than chivalry. But if that's not the case, and you guys are, when you're kind of just scoping him out, I would definitely be gracious. Most guys, especially if they love God, they want to be polite. They want to be kind and chivalrous. And it's not something, if they're not being that way, it's not because they don't want to be. Like, oh, bump these girls, she can hold her own door. Like, I don't think that's the case. And you have to think about it this way. If he grew up without a father figure, chances are he grew up around a lot of strong women. And he may be around women who don't want him to hold the door for them, who kind of push away that chivalry culture, if you will, that you're looking for. Because for a woman, and I like have been noticing this more and more, the longer we're married and we're going through different seasons of life, but the more and more you are around polite, kind, chivalrous men, you have to allow them to be that. Like, it can be very easy for me to rush to the car before Tim and me open the door. You know, like, I have to let him kind of get there and open the door, and you know, women can move a million miles a minute. So think about it that way, that if he doesn't have a father figure, not only is he lacking that example, but he probably had a very strong opposing force, you know, around him and presence while he was growing up. Does that make sense?
No, I like that a lot. Obviously, that's not going to be everybody's situation,
right?
Because there's some single moms who still want to teach their man how to be, or their son how to be chivalrous, and
right,
still expect that of them. But there definitely could be some where that's not, you know, independent woman, whatever. That.
And there is a big difference between telling a young man what to do, and then having a man around to show them.
Yeah, because more is caught than taught.
Right.
And I also think what you said is really good about, I'm blanking.
Okay, it'll come back to you. I did want to...
Oh, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
What you said about rushing to things, like allowing the man to be chivalrous. Even if you have a chivalrous man, I think that's a good nugget you gave them. And even going beyond chivalry, like sometimes in a marriage, like you may want the man to lead and you may want to go at a certain pace, but your man is going at a slower pace. Sometimes you got to step back. And that goes vice versa too. Like sometimes I may want to do something and Pauline just ain't there yet, and I got to slow down and just allow her to be able to get to where I feel like the Lord is telling us to go or whatever.
Right. Now, to kind of address the first part of the question, how do you deal with the man? I mentioned this in another episode, but like just the phrase of like dealing with is not something that I feel, it doesn't sound like God to me. It sounds like settling. It sounds like I have to put up with this. So I just be a little bit careful, or would just be curious to dive more into that, like why you use that phrase. But I think that when it comes to father figures, I don't know if you're kind of implying here that you want him to want to have a father figure, and it's kind of like, okay, I noticed the problem is that you're not chivalrous. The source of that problem is because you didn't grow up with a father figure. Well, the solution is for you to have a father figure in your life. you can't force somebody to want something. I think a lot of men who grew up without father figures, they are very aware that they don't have that. And it's usually a source of hurt and pain for them, and even a source of abandonment, maybe somebody would say. So I think that you have to be very sensitive. Women, we can be very good problem solvers. I definitely associate myself that way. I know that men can be fixers. But I think that, to identify something so vulnerable and say, oh, well, you just need a father figure in your life so that you can be more chivalrous, so that you can be this man of God that I know you can be. I think that I would not approach it that way. I think that if he brings it up and says like, oh yeah, like I'd really love to find a father figure, or there's this coach or this leader or this mentor that I have that's just been a great influence on me, like encourage that. But I think kind of making it into this simple fix of, well, you should just get a father figure is pretty insensitive given how important and how massively influential fathers are to men. Fathers are to women too, but especially to men in this scenario. So don't force that. He'll seek healing when he wants to, not even when he's ready, because nobody's ever really ready for anything. But when he wants to, and kind of decide in your mind, I'm going to pray for him that he would want that and that the Lord would show him the benefits of that. Because I'm almost positive most guys in that situation, if they aren't pursuing a male figure, it's because they see more risk than benefit. Because they're thinking about, my dad left me, or my dad was never there, my uncle, whatever the case is. They're just thinking about, they're trying to protect themselves from being hurt again, because nobody likes being hurt. And to have a father figure is very vulnerable to let somebody in. So just be really sensitive to that. And I'm not saying that you kind of flippantly mentioned it in the question, because obviously this was written, there was no tone or anything like that associated, but I just that just came to my heart when I was reading this question of being very gracious and really understanding the magnitude of fathers to men. And if you want to be in a relationship with this person, or you already are, you need to be very, very just gracious with that, because we've talked about it before. When men open up about things, and how we as women, how we respond will determine if he ever opens up to you ever again. So just keep that in mind. Now, as far as love, you said he doesn't know completely how to love, but is a Christian, God-fearing man. Not knowing how to love is an interesting claim to make. I think that you're probably right in a lot of ways. I mean, we're all learning how to love. Nobody knows the fullness of God and of his love. That's what we're all searching for, and we're all going after every single day. But if he doesn't, how do you know that he doesn't know how to love? This is why I was I don't really know where you guys are in a relationship, if you just started or if you're already in a relationship. And this part makes me think that you guys are in a relationship. To say that someone doesn't know how to love, you have to be pretty close to them. But also, nobody can give what they don't have. So, and I had to learn this not in a romantic relationship, but in a platonic relationship with a family member, of me expecting somebody to be a certain way and to talk to me a certain way, but it's realizing that person doesn't have that to give. They weren't given that when they were a child. They weren't taught to love. To them means this, and love means something different to everybody.
Yeah, can I say I just had a thought. This may not be you who asked this question, but it's possible that you may have an unrealistic expectation of love. Maybe you have a Hollywoodesque expectation of love where every day he's gonna bring you roses, and every time he sees you, he's gonna wine and dine you. Yeah, it's just what is that? There's a saying that we said it to somebody that we love before, that they are romantic.
A certain type of romantic.
Yeah, you can be is it a hopeless romantic?
Yeah.
Yeah, and just love just has to be this spectacle, this super engaging, spontaneous.
Yeah, it's a show.
Yeah. And you just want to be careful, because if that's what you're saying, that he doesn't love you like that, I don't know. I could see somebody saying well, if they can't do that, I'm going to find somebody who can.
Fine.
Sure, go ahead and do it. But if you're not able to find that, are you going to regret leaving somebody who was a good man, who did love you well, but didn't do it in a spectacular way every time?
Yeah, because
maybe he can't afford to do that.
That's a good point about tying it to chivalry, because that's why I'm wondering, well, what's your idea of chivalry? Because if some women expect flowers, in the beginning of every date, they expect, itineraries and, all these different things that are all great. Like, give me that, yeah. But I also think, it comes to a point where, like, okay, I did all the whining and dining, and, like, not that it has to be over, but now we're entering into a rhythm. We're doing life together. This is not, you're not here for the bells and whistles. So I think that, again, that goes back to you defining what chivalry means to you. A lot of women, it is the basic, like, holding the door to the car, holding the door when you're walking in and out of the building. Sometimes that's, and Tim does a great job of this, it's like the man walking on the side of the sidewalk that's closest to the road. Giving your jacket to a woman when it's cold, things like that. Holding hands, not holding hands, but, like, assisting a woman up and down, like, a stair or a platform or something like that. Absolutely, those things, but a lot of times that has nothing to do with love. That has something to do with, I'm a man, I'm made to, there's women around me I'm going to protect. Like, Tim does things like that for his mother. And obviously he loves his mom, but he's not, in a relationship. You don't just do that with people who you are trying to win over in a relationship. It's just like, this is how I treat women, because women are meant to be protected and meant to be loved. Like, that's just how it is, and I'm a man, so I'm going to do that. So I think it's hard, to expect that solely in a romantic kind of context. But yeah, back to the whole, he can't give what he doesn't have. So if you're noticing, he doesn't have a father figure, that's why he doesn't fully know how to love. I mean, well, number one, if he's a Christian, he does have a father figure. He has his Heavenly Father, who is the best example and the best teacher of love and all of those things. And that's ultimately his example. All earthly father figures we have should point us back to the Lord if they're, Christians. And you want him to start at the source, or that's where I hope he would start if he doesn't, if he was not able to have a father in the home when he was growing up. But again, if he doesn't see the Lord that way, and he doesn't see it as, an opportunity to grow as a man in that way, that's between him and God, and there's really nothing you can do, and nothing you should do to try to force that. It's only going to blow up in your face. But I would say, for you, as far as the question, how do you deal with somebody like this? How do you approach a situation? That's what I would like to say a little bit better. That's probably how I would phrase it. Not that there's anything wrong with how you phrase it, but if you're already seeing the way that he loves as an issue, regardless of the reason why, and it's not your job to change somebody when you're dating. You're literally investigating and you're being investigated. If you're already seeing that as an issue, the best thing for you to do is to walk away, because anything other than that is going to frustrate you and or frustrate him. You're trying to change him, he's going to change. You're going to be frustrated, he's going to feel like you're nagging him. It's just not going to be fun. So that's what I would say, because to say somebody doesn't know how to love is a pretty bold statement. I'm not saying it's not true, but if it is true, if you can decide in your heart, yes, I said what I said, and I meant it, and I have receipts to back it up, then I wouldn't be entertaining how to deal with somebody in that situation.
Yeah, so good. So, this has been another episode of the W Podcast. We'll see y'all next week.
Bye.
Thanks for watching this video.
To get more Christian relationship advice, subscribe to our channel.
And make sure you check out our other videos as well.